All right. Hello, everyone. And thank you for tuning in for another Authors Impact Hub podcast episode. I am your host, Juanita Woodson, founder of the Authors Impact Hub. And I'm always excited to bring on different authors from all over the US. I hope to go global with some of our authors one day. So today I have on with us Jim Rosenberg. So I'm excited to learn more about your journey as an author and your book. So, of course, I'll always give the authors an opportunity to tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, where you are from, and the title of the book that we will be discussing.
Well, thanks, Juanita. I'm very excited to be here. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to a lot of fun. My name is Jim Rosenberg. My author name is something very unique and different, which is James Rosenberg. Um, and I write legal thrillers. I've been a lawyer for more than 30 years. Some of my books are based on real cases that I've tried. They're all part of my Verdicts and Vindication series. And the most recent one that we're here to talk about is Fatal Reunion.
Yes, absolutely. So, okay, I love to hear that your background, your career has it inspired your journey as an author in the way of the type of books that you write, right? So we're going to be discussing Fatal Reunion today, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that storyline?
I can. This book was really inspired by being at camp growing up and the relationships you make as spending a whole summer with friends, and then lots of times you make friends with people and then you don't see them for 20 years. So this was inspired by nothing real, but what would happen if you had a little crush on somebody when you were younger and then you got in touch with them 25 years later, and how things possibly could go bad uh, because you don't take care of yourself and your relationships.
So this is inspired a little bit in part about your own life.
A little bit. It's real. Other books that I've written are more based on my life. This one really is not. The characters are no, but not based on anybody that I definitively know, but they are kind of archetypes that most people would recognize.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the characters in the book.
Well, they are flawed. Um, the books I write, usually the author protagonist is a good guy and he's good through and through, and that's all good. But this protagonist in this book, he has some faults, and he his wife has thrown him out. He fundamentally has some issues, and then he hooks up with, or at least wants to hook up with, an old flame, and all of that causes him problems because he thinks that, like some people do, that they get together, he envisions a life together, she takes him down a different road that gets him in much bigger trouble.
Okay, so it sounds like some things have to stay in the past and leave and leave them there.
um well, we all idolize certain people from our past, and sometimes that's not reality.
Right.
So people's real colors shine through much more so when they get older.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to take a step back, right? Because you have mentioned a few times that this storyline is a little different than the other books that you have written. So can you give us a kind of a brief breakdown of some of the other books that you've written and what made this one different? What made you step out of your comfort zone with the storyline this time around?
Um, well, when I started writing, and I started later in life than most people. As a matter of fact, like in high school or college, I hated writing.
Okay.
Anytime you got a writing assignment, I'm like, stay away. But then I found out like writing's pretty cool, and you can actually like influence how people feel and think by writing. So The first book that I wrote, although it was actually the second book I published, was called The Jersey. And it's very autobiographical. And it's about, in large part, my son and his soccer playing and why we as parents find it so important that our kids are successful. So it's really about relationships and about family and about overcoming tragedy. um, Kind of unique, still technically a legal thriller. There's still a lot of legal stuff in it, but it's much more personal than other books that I've written. The second book I wrote, but the first book I published, is Legal Reserve. So I'll even hold it up since I have it sitting right here, which is based on characters that I knew from law school and characters that I've practiced law with, and is based on a real trial that I had 10 years before this. And what I, Legal Reserves, what I loved about it was that it's a great story, but also that by putting it out, I learned all about the publishing business, and which I had no involvement with before. And I guess to my surprise, it did really, really well. Um, and I was amazed, but it did great. And so then I followed that up with Unclean Hands, which again is based on another trial that I had before. Um, and then I followed that up with Guarding Innocence, which that one was inspired by my daughter and her relationship with all her friends. And it's about a law student who loses his parents, and his brother and sister have to move in with him. So, also fairly personal kind of story. But the first four books that I wrote were all about civil lawsuits, which
Okay.
when I what I love about writing in the legal thriller genre is, first of all, people love it. There are so many people who read in the genre. There are so many books and movies that people love. I grew up reading John Grisham. I read a lot of Scott Turow, and you know, so my writing is clearly influenced by them. Um, and so writing about civil matters is good. There's always a lot of conflict, but ultimately that's just about money, which is important, people care about.
Okay.
But in Fatal Reunion, that's the first time I've dealt in the criminal context.
Okay.
And it ends up being a murder trial. And truthfully, I was a little concerned writing about it because I'm a firm believer in write what you know, and I don't really know criminal law nearly as well as I know civil law. But I got some help. I got people who know more about it than I do to help out. And the stakes in a murder trial are a bit greater than they are in a civil trial. So I found that to be really interesting. And I think there's a payoff at the end when you realize how much of if you make wrong choices in a criminal context, it's going to have an adverse effect on your life, to say the
Absolutely.
least.
Absolutely. John Grisham is one of my favorite authors, right? So even in like movies, so you write especially with this new book, Fatal Reunion, I love these type of storylines. They pull you in. So absolutely excited to learn a little bit more about it. So because you are a lawyer, have you had to think about any type of like protection in writing? Or that you don't say anything that, could cause some legal implications.
Um, what I worry about most when I write is making characters who I base off of people I know in real life too much like the person I know in real life. Because when you try a lot of cases, you meet a lot of characters. Um, and so you don't want somebody to recognize themselves in a book. That's my biggest worry.
Okay.
In terms of, I don't really worry. First of all, I change enough. This is one of the best things about writing from a lawyer's perspective is a couple of the cases that I write about in real life, I lost. So when you write about it in a legal thriller, you get to do whatever you want, which is the best. And so the ending can be anything you want it to be. And the judge, instead of yelling at you, could say, wow, you're the greatest attorney who ever
Right.
lived. You get to write the dialogue. Um, and so, I'm not bad in real life, but the lawyers in the books are really good. They know what they're doing. So, um, that's one of the fun things about writing legal thrillers is you get to control the ending and you get to control how things resolve, good or bad.
Absolutely. So you get to use your creativity in writing. So that's one of the things I love about writing myself. So can you talk about maybe what were some of the challenges that you faced in writing this last book, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Um, in every book that I write, there's a few challenges. One, lawyers are generally pretty good writers, but they write in a style that is good for legal writing.
Okay.
So creative writing is certainly different than legal writing, and you have to put on your creative writing hat when you switch back and forth. So when you write a legal brief, there's a certain style. There are ways that you make your arguments. Again, you get a lot more freedom writing creatively, but it's a totally different way of doing it.
Okay.
So that is a big challenge for me that I love that I get to switch gears. The second challenge, and I would love if I could, or when I become a full-time writer. That is certainly my goal. So far, I haven't been able to do that. So I have a full-time job. So the biggest challenge in writing is finding the time to write.
Okay.
And for me, I have found that the best way to get things done, it's advice I give to people when they ask, is I carve out 20 minutes to 45 minutes a day, whenever that is, and try and get words down on paper. And well, I guess words on the computer, but try to write something every day. Don't do that all the time, but I'm pretty good about it. And if you write for 20 minutes a day, you know, try to get 1,000 words out a day. After a month or 2 months, you got a pretty good start going.
Absolutely.
And there is, I mean, I'm sure you know this, but like watching a book grow, where you know where it's going, but you're not quite sure exactly how you're going to get there, it's pretty awesome. And
Yeah.
then, like, one of my favorite things about writing is, I mean, I don't know how you write, but I write a first draft,
Yes.
um, usually from start to finish, but not always. And then my favorite part of writing is the first revision of the first draft because it's like reading a new story. It's like, oh yeah, I wrote that and that's really good, or that kind of stinks.
It
It's
just
like that
sounds,
needs,
yeah.
and like you're learning about your characters that you've created as you're reading the book for really the first time. So the whole creative process I love, but I've kind of had to learn it as I've gone along. And then the big challenge is the whole publishing concept, which is something I knew nothing about, and I love some of it. And
Okay.
then I'm sure you've heard this before, but like the marketing aspects,
Yes.
not one of my favorites. It's really hard. I don't quite get it. It gets very frustrating at times, but good or bad, it works.
Yes. Absolutely.
So there there are lots of challenges, and I love trying to figure out ways around them. And when you do, it feels good.
Yes. So you touched on some things, and I definitely want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into it. Because I love the idea of time blocking, right? So that's what you do when you say I'm carving 20 minutes a day to write. Because I was gonna bounce into my next question. How do you balance your life as an attorney with writing? Kind of you touched on that a little bit because I'm sure being an attorney, it's a very demanding job. On top of life, and you have a puppy, right? You have a dog, so that's time
And
too.
3 kids.
And children. So yeah.
Um, I mean, I get the question a lot, like, how do you find time to write?
Right.
And my flippant answer always is because I don't have much of a life. Which, I am certainly much more of a homebody than lots of the friends we hang out with, and I love staying at home, and I love staying at home and writing. Um, but like everything else, you got to find balance. So, you got to get your work done, you got to do your work, and then you got to spend time with your family, and then you got to figure out a time to write. And then
Absolutely.
hopefully you get some sleep also. So, like this stuff, making time to talk to you about this, that's not a problem. I mean, I really enjoy the talking about it. I really enjoy when new writers call and say, will you go have coffee with me and tell me about the process or tell me what I should do in this situation? I've gotten to meet authors who I never would have gotten to meet because of this. So mostly it's all good.
Absolutely. I love that. So what's one thing that has worked for you marketing wise, and what's one new thing that you're willing to?
One thing that's marketing, the suggestion was given to me a long time ago is like focus on one thing that works. I'm still looking for that one thing. But I, I have done advertising on Amazon, and it seems to work.
A
It's
lot of
also
I did look.
it's really frustrating. It's I don't understand it. I certainly don't understand it completely, but there is cause and effect that when you advertise, you sell more books. And when you sell more books, you end up selling more books after that. Um, so, you know, again, like TikTok, things like that, I've tried and horrible, embarrassing.
Okay.
Videos on TikTok. So I gave that up for a little bit. I want to get back into that. Because I think you work in one area and then you work in another. But most lawyers, if we can generalize, are shy and don't want to put themselves out there. I put myself in that category. Um, but you got to put yourself out in some form or another so that people know that your book is out there. And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you had this problem when you first started writing, but the thought of somebody reading my book at first was like the scariest proposition of all time. And
Absolutely.
then like a few people read it and they're like, they give you good feedback. And then now I love when people read it. I don't love getting mediocre reviews, but you get them.
Yeah,
And
we just take it and keep pushing. I still
yeah,
think that reviews still work because guess what? You still read my book.
right. That um, yeah, I mean, pe- people can be nasty
Yeah.
on the internet, but for the most part, when you get a review where somebody gets the book and they give you a review that clearly shows that they read it in the way that you'd want the reader to read it, then that's great. And that's like when somebody unknown, when somebody in Australia leaves you a review, it's like, oh my God, that's just awesome. And when somebody leaves you a lousy review, usually I say, you're reading in the wrong genre, you don't quite get it.
Yes, absolutely. So I love to ask authors the questions about kind of the behind the scenes with their writing, as well as ask you questions about the book. But one thing that I've learned in marketing is that you have to take people on the journey with you, right? So we have a finished product, but people gravitate to you, the author. So that's why I love to like pull out what made you start to write? What are some of the things that you struggle with? What are some of these successes? Because then your audience, they really get to know you. They get to know the heart behind what you do. So I think it definitely does make a really big difference. And I do want to ask because you said in high school, middle school, high school, you didn't like to write, and now you want to make a career out of this. So what was that shift for you?
Well, there's two answers to that. One I kind of sort of gave already, which is I had a really bad case that had a really bad result. And I realized like by writing, I can change that result. That that's certainly part of it. The other is a little more involved, and I'll try and keep it short, but my son was a really mediocre baseball player. And when he was 9, he was somehow on an all-star baseball team. But the team played all summer and he didn't play one inning. He just sat on the bench, sat on the bench, sat on the bench until the final game of the final weekend because 3 kids got sick. He got into the game and he got a hit and he ended up on first base. And there was this high five he gave to the first base coach that is still imprinted in my mind. And it was just this moment that meant so much for me, like watching your kid work hard to achieve something. And so it was like overwhelming and I couldn't express like what it was like. So that evening I went home and I wrote an essay about it, like
Okay.
why this is so important. And then I passed the essay around to like family and some friends, and they got it. It's like
Yeah.
they understood, they related to it. It's like everybody kind of feels this with their kids. And I realized like writing can move people, right? Writing can change people and you can connect with people through your writing. So just so you know that if you want, that essay has been fictionalized, but is included in this book, The
Okay.
Jersey, um, because that one's very personal. So that once I wrote that, I realized like, yeah, I enjoy writing, and so then I felt like I had some stories, and I did.
5 books later.
Five, right, right, absolutely.
Yes. So what's one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's thinking about jumping in to this genre of writing? Because it's very different from other genres.
Um, the the overwhelming, overriding advice I give to anybody is write what you know. So if you know law and want to write legal thrillers, that is awesome. I think every single writer, everybody I've ever talked to, the first thing they write, they have imposter syndrome feeling. And we the first time you write a book, you're like, I have no idea if this is any good or not.
Yes.
And there's no way to find out unless you write it, and there's no way to find out unless you let other people read it. And so
Absolutely.
my advice to people is write your book, enjoy the process, and then put it out there for people to read. And the worst thing that happens is nobody ever reads it. But the best thing is really, really good.
Yes. You did it. You stepped out of your comfort zone and you pushed publish. Listen, so you said the first time you write a book, you have that imposter syndrome. If I can be honest, I think I with the imposter syndrome probably each time it's time to
Um,
publish.
it's it's really hard to overcome.
Yes.
And I'm not sure what advice I give to people to get over it other than who cares? So
Yes.
we all feel like a little bit of an imposter in our lives. So yeah, it's really it's the whole concept of writing has become so rewarding for me, and so enjoyable. Um, and so I don't do it for the money,
Yes.
which is probably the second bit of advice, which is you're probably not going to make enough to give up your day job. And if you're that good or that popular and you can, then great. But write because you feel passionate about something. And if you got the story, then put it down and then see what happens with it.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. So in this book, Fatal Reunion, so what message do you want the reader to walk away with after reading the book?
um, be careful. That make sure you know people before you let them too far into your lives. Um, that I mean, in this day and age of the internet, we all kind of have our own different personalities that we put out there online, and that's not real. And so you got to figure out what's real in life before you start trusting people who you may not have a reason to trust.
Good. I like that. Now, I'm just throwing out this fun question, right? Have you ever thought about turning any of your books into a movie?
I that to me that's the dream. I mean, all my books have been made into audiobooks, but anybody can do that. But that's very cool when they're audiobooks and people are listening to them or getting them in a different way. But to me, I mean, I think legal thrillers are made for movies.
Yes.
Um, and when I write, I don't know about your thought process when you write, but when I write, I'm kind of picturing a movie when I write. If it's court scene, I picture a court and stylized like it would be in a movie. So I think my books would be great for movies. Steven Spielberg has not called me yet, but if you have his number, I'd be happy to call
Well, I'm definitely gonna be front row when the first movie drops because I think for me, I always get inspired by fiction authors. So I write in the nonfiction self-help, but I love fiction books. I love them. And there's like some stories that are always like playing in my head and I jot them down. I'm like, I just need to do it, but I haven't taken that step. So I definitely get inspired when I speak to fiction authors for sure.
Well, I love speaking with any authors because I think they're awesome.
Yes, absolutely. I think that your words, they leave a legacy for generations to come. So when we're not here anymore, someone will be able to pick up our books and get inspired to go either write their own books or to go and be careful, right? Take those lessons. No matter what type of book you read, there's a message and a lesson in everything.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll make you this promise. When the first book gets made into a movie, you and I will sit together in the first row and we'll share a bucket of popcorn.
Absolutely. I love that. So how can we connect with you on social media, TikTok, because I know you're going to be back on there all the
um, I have an author website, jamesrosenberglegalthrillers.com. Facebook, you can find me at Rosenberg Writes. Facebook, Instagram, which I'm trying to get better at. Um, and what am I missing? I'm missing one, but I can't remember what it is. But it's all Rosenberg Writes.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah, and if best place is probably my website, drop me an email, sign up for the email list. That would be great. I would love to connect with anybody.
Yes. That I'm so glad that you said that because you said, the marketing not so much, but if you are tapping into email marketing, you are on the right path. So definitely keep up with that.
One more thing that needs to be improved. I got to say that.
Yeah, it's a start though. So we celebrate those small wins and then we work towards perfecting that. So I always end the show with one last question, and that is, so what impact do you want your books, your author brand to leave on the world?
Well, one answer would be the books get made into movies, and you know then Academy Awards are given. That's probably not within, yeah, not the likely result, but actually, I think what I want my books to do is one, inspire people to write, but I also the one of the main things I want is for my kids to be proud that their dad is an author.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm sure that they are definitely keep writing, especially because some of the books are inspired by them too. So I'm sure they're absolutely proud.
I hope so.
Yes, yes. So thank you so much for taking this time out to share about your author journey to inspire writers like me, right, to step out of their comfort zone into a different genre. So I'll be reaching out to you if I have any questions on how to get started with that. And then listeners, make sure that you follow author named James. Follow James Rosenberg on social media. Most importantly, go to his website and subscribe to the website. If you order a book on Amazon, I'm leaving this disclosure at the end of each episode, right? Leave a review. leave a review. Reviews help authors to be seen by future readers. So leave a review. Leave a good review. If you feel indifferent, send them an email about with your bad reviews, right? But absolutely, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for taking me through your journey. I'm excited to pick up a copy of all of your books. And until next time, y'all take care.
Thank you so much, Juanita.
Thank you.